My informative speech today is about farming basics. I first want to tell you about how complicated today's farming environment is. Some people think of the family farmer as an easy job, but it's far from that. Farmers have to be so knowledgeable today, knowledgeable about the purchases of their equipment, to the crops they plant, the type of seed and fertilizer, etc. They also need to know how to maintain this equipment. With the price of the equipment, it's important to know how to maintain it to prevent breaks. They have to have crop knowledge of production, how to increase their yields and the production of everything they use. Their record keeping, they have to have good records of their inputs and their outputs to know when and where they're making their money. Farmers are under a great deal of stress. Some call it they're under the stress of Mother Nature, which means the weather. The weather has a lot to do with the success of a farmer's crops. Farmers' income is based solely on the demand of cost of supply and demand. How much it costs to get the crop from the field to the elevator and what the farmer gets for it. Now the first step into planting a crop is to prepare a good seed bed, which means you need to take care of the soil. Now to get the soil ready, of course you have to harvest the crop from the year before. Then some farmers make the choice to either disc or plow the ground. This prepares a good seed bed. On the other hand, some farmers choose to do their crops planted no-till, which means they do not tear up the present year's crops, they just plant right into the crop residue that is left. Now the ground has to be enhanced from time to time with chemicals such as nitrogen, phosphate, and potash. Lime is also applied based on a soil test. Rotation of crops is a good idea. The rotation of crops in this area is usually wheat, corn, and beans. When a crop is rotated, it helps reduce the level of weeds and the potential of diseases in the future crops on that same ground. Insecticides are applied at points and times during the crop growing season to cut down on the insect population. And herbicides are also sometimes applied, and herbicides are applied for the weed protection, against weed protection. Safety is an issue with all farmers. Grain bins are very dangerous. I know several producers myself that have fallen into grain beds, either checking the quality of their grain or the quantity of the bin, that have fell in and have actually suffocated inside of a grain bin. All farm equipment is dangerous and children should never be around it. Now to begin planting the crop, as I mentioned earlier, we need to work our ground, but not too deep. Now we plant our corn here in this area between April into mid-May. The soybeans, they're planted between May the 5th and May 15th, if you want to get the most production that you can. The land has to be somewhat dry, that's why we have to wait till later on in the spring. And of course it has to be dry so that the soil does not stick to the equipment itself. The average yield for corn in this area is around 145, and soybeans is about 48 bushel to the acre. Crops go through stages of growth, from the planting of the seed until it reaches maturity. When the crops are around knee-high, sometimes farmers choose to do a cultivating process, which means they use a piece of machinery pulled behind a tractor that loosens the soil around the plant itself, and this also helps control weeds. Corn and soybeans are used in so many products that we use every day. But just to mention a few, corn is used in food, drugs, cosmetics, cleaners, and recently in the use of ethanol. Soybeans can be used for oil, food for animals, biodiesel fuels, candles, and crayons. Now when they harvest their crops, they usually harvest through September through October. That's for corn and soybeans. But they always try to harvest before the snow flies. Now everyone thinks farmers are getting rich, and that all farmers are rich. But with the increasing prices of machinery, fuel, cash rent, chemicals, seed, fertilizer, all those cut into the farmer's profit. At $200,000 for a tractor or a combine, it takes a lot of $4 a bushel crops to pay for an item. All types of equipment are required on the farm. And the more equipment that is purchased, the more it cuts into the profit. Combines, you have to have them to harvest. Tractors are used for so many various reasons. To pull mowers, to pull wagons, to just do every kind of, anything you would need around the farm. I've always lived on a farm, and my parents have always made me appreciate the farm way of life. My love of farming continues today, than ever, since I have worked for the USDA for 28 years myself. I know how important farming is and how wholeheartedly they work so hard to provide the food that feeds all Americans. So the next time you're driving down the road yourself and traffic's backed up by a farmer with a big piece of machinery behind him, just stop for a minute. Don't get aggravated with him. Just stop and think about how hard he works to provide the food that feeds the entire world. I wholeheartedly believe that American farmers are the hardest working people in the world. Not only are they the hardest working, they do one of the most important jobs in the world. They feed America. Thank you.